Parasocialism.
Parasocial.
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 Parasociality.
Parasocial.
Parasocial. Parasocial freak.
It's 2020. The pandemic is in full swing, and you are told to stay inside. Your acquaintances and friends melt away, unable to be easily reached. Unable to leave home, and with no one to talk to, you turn to your computer and browse. What's this? An anime character is streaming. She does look kind of cute. She's reading messages sent by chatters. She read your chat. She's talking to you. You keep sending messages. Soon, you start sending donations. You grow attached. You consider yourself her friend or something even more. On the other side of the screen, the streamer behind the character model barely knows who you are. For some, this is a cautionary tale, and for others, a personal story. Why do so many of us develop these kinds of feelings? Why has online streaming and VTubing exploded in popularity in the years since the COVID-19 pandemic? Sit back and relax as we dive into what scientific literature has to say about parasocialism, the loneliness epidemic, and what viewers and streamers can learn from it. Before getting into parasocialism, I would like you to think back to your childhood. How did you spend time with your neighbors, friends, and family? For many, you spent time in person together, at parks, malls, libraries, movie theaters, or even simply at each other's homes. Everybody seemed to know each other, help one another. But in recent decades, it seems this is no longer the case. Even before the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent lockdowns, we were already keeping to ourselves more, and as a result, people are lonelier today than ever before.
The U.S. Surgeon General today declared a new public health epidemic in America: loneliness. A new report from his office finds loneliness can have profound effects on mental health as well as heart disease, stroke, and dementia.
Social disconnection also raises the risk of heart disease and dementia and premature death on levels on par with smoking daily, and even greater than the risks that we see associated with obesity. So however you look at it, loneliness and isolation are public health concerns that we have to prioritize.
And a deeper look into the trends in the US over the past several decades highlights that this is not a new problem. Average time spent alone increased from 285 minutes per day in 2003 to 309 minutes per day in 2019, before pandemic lockdowns went into effect. An increase of a full 24 hours of time spent alone per month. Social time spent with friends in person decreased from 60 minutes per day in 2003 to about 35 minutes per day in 2019, and dropped even further to only 20 minutes per day in 2020 when lockdowns began. These declines were the most significant in young people, ages 15 to 24. The BBC's Loneliness Experiment surveyed 55,000 people in 2015 and found that loneliness was as common, if not more prevalent, in young people compared to the elderly across cultures, countries, and genders.
There's often a stereotype that loneliness strikes older, isolated people, and of course it can. But we found that on average, younger people are even lonelier. 40% of 16 to 24-year-olds who took part told us they often or very often feel lonely, compared with 27% of over 75s. We also asked about social media and found that people who report high levels of loneliness tend to have more Facebook friends who they only know online. Maybe if we feel lonely, we look online for the meaningful friendships we don't have in real life.
And what about those friends we made when we were children? Well, increasingly, younger millennials and Gen Z report growing up feeling lonely. close friendships have also been declining in recent decades. In 1990, a quarter of surveyed Americans reported having 3 or fewer close friends, while in 2021, this had jumped to almost half of surveyed Americans. Both men and women reported significant decline in close friendships, with 15% of men and 10% of women reporting having no close friends at all, a stark increase since 1990. The COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent quarantines and social distancing only exacerbated these growing trends. Harvard Graduate School of Education's Making Caring Common project issued a report in 2021 that highlighted a startling 61% of young people aged 18 to 25 reported miserable degrees of loneliness, with substantial increases in loneliness since the outbreak of the pandemic. With growing social isolation over decades in many parts of the world and a global pandemic resulting in further social distancing, people increasingly turn to imitations or functional alternatives to social relationships. Parasocialism may feel like a recent development with the growth of online content creation and streaming, but parasocial interaction was first described in the 1950s as televisions became a common household appliance throughout the United States. Sociologists Donald Horton and R. Richard Wall established in 1956 that parasocial interactions were one-sided relationships between viewers and media characters, where viewers perceived intimacy with media characters and interacted with them in imaginary ways. Throughout the second half of the 20th century, parasocial interactions and relationships were studied through the lens of psychology and communication study. In 1996, 2 Stanford communication professors found that parasocial relationships develop, maintain, and dissolve similarly to real-life friendships. Other studies showed that parasocial relationships are more often formed with media characters who depict traits or behave in a way that viewers deem attractive and likable, also similar to friendships. Theories and frameworks have developed that claim people are motivated to seek media experiences that allow for the development of parasocial relationships to satisfy the need for social contact or as an alternative to in-person social relationships. It should come as no surprise, then, that as social distancing and the pandemic worsened isolation and loneliness, more and more people had unfulfilled need for social contact, and those people then sought media experiences to satisfy this need. Parasocial relationships grew significantly more common during the pandemic. One argument for the increase in parasocial relationships was reliability, as shows and live streams can be expected to air or stream at a regular time. Social distancing presented barriers and necessitated changes to how we communicated with our friends, whereas media characters remained reliably accessible, or even more accessible as more media characters live streamed from home. It is clear that VTubers and virtual streamers began increasing in popularity around the same time, related to, and potentially even as a result of, an increasing demand for the aforementioned need for social contact. Unable to socialize or make meaningful connections in person, people flocked to the internet as both streamers and viewers. As both the number of viewers and VTubers and virtual streamers increased, awareness of parasocial interactions and relationships also increased, for better and for worse. Academic overview aside, let's take a step back. What have you heard about parasocialism? Well, chances are, you were told of stories of viewers who held delusions of friendship, overshared personal details, and sometimes even overstepped physical boundaries. And many streamers would agree with you.
Listen loud and clear. None of your content creators, your favorite ones, including me, are your friends. Now, again, it's not just to make you feel bad or whatever. It's just the truth. Look, I have 1 million subscribers, but but I don't know a million people in the world.
Interviews conducted with Twitch streamers for academic publication highlight the complex relationship between viewer and streamer. Quote, "There's a level of friendship. You sit with these people like every week, for hours. The fact that they want to spend 3 or 4 hours in my stream a day, they could be doing literally anything else. And that's what they're spending their time on." End quote. Compared to the historic definition of parasocial interaction from the 1950s, online streaming introduces a new layer of interactivity. While relationships between viewers and streamers remain unequal, as a single streamer may be responding to hundreds or thousands of viewers, the previously characteristic one-sided nature of parasocial relationships has broken down. Platforms like Twitch and YouTube allow viewers to chat live with the streamer while on stream, and Discord and other social media platforms allow for interactivity with streamers off-stream. This has the potential to generate reciprocal parasocial interaction and closeness from a streamer towards members of their community. Many streamers and content creators value these interactions within their communities. Quote, "I hesitate to call the people who communicate or who engage the community fans. For me, that almost creates a sort of a mental separation because I want each and every single one of them to be very close to me." End quote. However, consequences of these interactions are apparent. Invasion of privacy was often cited. Streamers may share personal details of themselves to appear more authentic, such as what they did today, their emotions, concerns, or recent events in their lives. Despite setting boundaries around personal details and general precautions, stories of unwanted social contact and probing into private lives and the past are all too common. And for VTubing especially, where anonymity behind an avatar or persona can be part of the appeal for streamers, invasion of privacy can be all the more significant and uncomfortable. Mental health was another, often cited topic. Streamers reported that viewers and community members often divulged personal information about their mental health in chat or social media outlets. While many VTuber and streamer communities are increasingly open to advocating for mental health and providing a safe space, oversharing of sensitive mental health information presents a dilemma. Quote, "I'm a really sympathetic, empathetic person, and I feel really bad. I know you have things going on, and I feel for you, and I know you like the community, but also you're messaging me too much. We're here for you, but I'm not a therapist." End quote. Oversharing of this kind of information not only brings up privacy concerns, but also causes a great deal of stress for the streamer. Quote, "I've had people seem like they might be suicidal, come into the chat, and then they're upset that you're not doing something about it. I don't understand how you can even do that to somebody, put that kind of pressure on somebody. The rest of the day, I'm going to be thinking about whether or not this person's going to be okay. And it's not even my job in the first place to fix that. You know, I'm not a professional. I'm telling you to call somebody, talk to your family or your friends or a therapist or suicide hotline. You don't come into a live Twitch channel." End quote. Streamers often feel a sense of responsibility for the well-being and behavior of their community, which can be a significant source of stress. Well-intentioned but over-eager viewers who feel obligated to excessively share personal information or overreact to perceived toxicity or negativity from others on behalf of the streamer not only induces stress, but also presents a gray area in moderation and community management. Quote, "That's been one of the biggest problems for me, because how do you handle if somebody is being disruptive, but they don't understand why they're being disruptive? It's really difficult. So just ban them, right? I don't want to treat somebody badly because they don't understand. End quote. So, with all that being said, what can we do about parasocialism? As a streamer, would it be easiest to not engage at all with the hope of avoiding any parasocial interactions, or else to only interact with viewers on a need-to-know basis? And as a viewer, should we perceive of streamers and VTubers as strictly transactional, and avoid incorporating our feelings into this activity for fear of becoming parasocial? Well, turns out, it's not that straightforward. As defined earlier, parasocial interactions and relationships are not inherently negative, despite the negative connotations, merely describing a different, unequal form of interaction with a media persona or public figure. The effects of parasocialism depend on how we shape our interactions with others, whether a streamer to their community or a viewer to the streamers they watch. For streamers, the consequences of harmful parasocial interactions and relationships are indeed frightening. What good can come from encouraging or maintaining parasocial interactions with your viewers? One benefit that comes to mind easiest is that of donations. More invested and engaged viewers are more likely to send a super chat, sign up for a Twitch subscription, or YouTube membership. This has also been found to benefit charity live streams, and especially animal-focused charities. And we have certainly seen very successful examples of such charity live streams over the years. Aside from financial incentive, parasocial interaction can have a positive effect on reinforcing social norms within a community. Quote, both of these elements, individually addressing the audience and paying attention to chat, directly influenced parasocial interactions positively, and that, even more important, parasocial interactions alongside overall enjoyment affected conformance to social norms. In other words, the more streamers interact with viewers, the less likely viewers switch streams or engage in trolling or flaming. End quote. Basically, the more invested a viewer is with a streamer and their community, the less likely they potentially are to engage in behaviors that the rest of the community views as inappropriate, such as overstepping boundaries, spamming, or being disruptive, to avoid being isolated or cast out from the community. According to these findings, streamers can engage in positive parasocial interactions that encourage respectful behaviors from viewers. Combined with conventional moderation and boundary setting, this has the potential to reinforce positive norms in their communities constructively. Well, at least in theory. For any streamers watching, what do you think about these findings? Are they feasible? What challenges do you foresee? Feel free to leave a comment below. And for us viewers, what can we do? Well, for starters, we can and should recognize and respect the boundaries set by the streamers who we watch and appreciate. This can range from following chat rules to providing adequate space and distance, to respecting privacy of personal, private, and past information. We can showcase our appreciation for the streamers who bring us joy in our lives in ways that do not cause unwanted stress in their lives. This includes simply participating in the audience, volunteering in the community, moderating, and potentially organizing or participating in fan works and projects individually or communally. Surveys taken immediately after live video experiences on platforms such as Twitch reduced loneliness and increased connectedness and positive affect, showing that parasocial interactions can have positive effects. The positives of parasocialism do exist, but are dependent on how these interactions are used. Despite living in an increasingly interconnected world, we feel increasingly isolated and lonely. The COVID-19 pandemic and social distancing only exacerbated this trend. We turned to the internet and online interactions to fill the void, but some of the relationships that are made with online figures, streamers, and VTubers are not much better. Horror stories of parasocial relationships gone too far, bordering on obsession, are pointed to as cautionary tales to avoid. But it has become increasingly clear that parasocial interactions and relationships with online media personae are here to stay, and we must learn and adapt healthy ways of interacting with them. Parasocial interactions can be part of a balanced and healthy social diet, and studies back up this claim. Quote, "Studies suggest that media personae do not generally compensate for friendship deficiencies. Rather, parasocial relationships complement social relationships because the same psychological tools needed to flourish interpersonally are needed to do so parasocially." End quote. The key is the development of healthy social relationships alongside parasocial ones, and to not allow your social interactions to be defined by parasocial relationships alone. The communities of the streamers and VTubers who you watch and love are great places to start. Find others who share your mutual love and appreciation for the streamers who you watch, and channel your love and appreciation in productive and constructive ways. And streamers. Positive parasocial interactions have the potential to build a community with strong social connections, participation, cohesion, and a sense of belonging that can increase trust and reinforce social norms. As former U.S. Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy stated,
but it turns out that when we focus on connecting to something bigger than ourselves, that's actually when we find joy. It's why service is one of the most powerful antidotes to loneliness. It's why building community is one of the most important things we can do for our health and well-being.
At the end of the day, I believe Fela Kanku said it best.
For some people, it can come across as silly or preachy, since as streamers, VTubers or not, we make our living off of sharing experiences and memories with our fans. This causes a lot of the people to think that we're essentially farming parasocial relationships for our own gain, that it's just a one-sided thing without any benefit to the viewer, and that the streamer doesn't help in some way, or just wants to milk them essentially. That's not how I see it when it comes to streaming. In some of the worst moments and lowest points in my life, when no one else was there for me in the world, I've relied on streamers and parasocial relationships. I believe that everyone does. In the distant past, it was like Markiplier and Jacksepticeye. Then as I got older, it became offline TV and then VTubers and all kinds of other creators that still get me through rough patches when there are days I can't even get out of bed, or I find it hard just to shower and brush my teeth because everything feels so hopeless. Parasocial relationships can be beneficial and inspirational, as long as they're handled in a healthy way and you don't start prioritizing them over your own real-world life.